A parking lot, a tent, a pack of scissors. That's the entire retail infrastructure for a farm that grossed $158,000 last year. No farm stand, no walk-in cooler, no delivery van, no farmer's market booth. The customers do all the harvesting themselves.
We did just shy of 160 last year. So we're about 158.5. If you're selling everything that you're growing, then your limitation is how much you're growing, right?
This is Pure Land Farm in North Texas, run by Megan Neubauer and her dad. 2 people, no full-time employees, 8 weeks of open season, and a business model that most market gardeners never considered. This is the pick your own model, and the numbers behind it might change how you think about farming entirely. For 5 years, Megan and her dad ran her market garden year-round. They did what most farmers do: grow it, harvest it, wash it, pack it, take it to market, sell it, and bring back what they couldn't sell. And they did it for 12 months a year. Their best year doing all of that was under $50,000 gross.
That definitely was 9 years ago when we went from market garden to pick your own. And we were growing on the same amount of space, but the difference is we were making that space produce year round, and obviously we couldn't produce nearly as much at one given time because we had to do the harvesting and the marketing and all of that stuff as well. So even though we were using all of our space, we spread it out so that we could reasonably move it all as it came ready. But we would only, I think our peak year in the 5 years before we switched over to pick your own was it was under 50K. And that's a lot of work for grossing under 50K. So now we've cut the time down by half, and we will get to quadrupling it.
Then they flipped the model. Same land, same 2 people, but instead of harvesting, packing, and hauling, they opened the gates and let the customers do the work.
If I can make all the money in 2 months that I could make in a year, it works for us to do it in the 2.
Same land, same people, more than 3 times the revenue in a fraction of the time. Here's how it actually works. Megan breaks her year into 4 phases: off-season, preseason, season, and postseason. The preseason starts annually around mid-March. That's when they plant everything at once. Cool weather crops go into the ground, tomatoes and peppers get started indoors.
And I like to think of it as off-season, pre-season, season, and then postseason. So right now, we're really getting going in the preseason. We have to start seed, so the cool weather things like carrots are already in the ground, but tomatoes have been started for weeks, peppers, beets, all that stuff we start inside. But the main thing that Dad is doing is getting beds ready, because we have on April 1st, we'll look at the 10-day forecast. And if there's anything that starts with a 3, we'll wait. And as soon as we see a 39 that creeps in, we'll stop.
By mid-May, the farm opens to the public. 8 weeks, about 30 open pick days. People buy a ticket, walk the rows, and harvest whatever's ripe. There's no wash station, no cold storage, no packing line. The product goes straight from the plants into the customer's harvest basket. They weigh it at checkout and pay. This eliminates most of the labor and infrastructure that crushes small farm margins. What does she grow? 11 different types of crops: tomatoes, peppers, beets, carrots, onions, garlic, squash, cucumbers, berries, flowers, just to name a few. Bread and butter varieties only, such as green zucchini, not exotic heirlooms.
You need to mix in low maintenance things, right? We definitely have our low maintenance things and our high maintenance things. And the high maintenance things we can only have scaled to where we have because of the low maintenance things. It could not all be tomato farm or a carrot farm that I had to weed, which wouldn't be a good experience anyway.
And the number one seller,
The berries are the highest of demand for sure. Blackberries, if you could go strawberries, massive demand. Next to that, really, it's cherry tomatoes, it's baked tomatoes that are still, there's really great demand for. But honestly, I don't grow anything anymore that there isn't great demand for. So that's beets, carrots, onions, garlic, the tomatoes, bells, hots, squash. These are all bread and butter varieties. So it's like green zucchinis. I'll do a stretch of golden zucchini, but by far the green is more popular. Yellow cracknecks, the cantaloupes, I think that's it. The easier to eat, the easier to sell.
let's open the books. Last season, Pure Land Farm grossed $158,500. Here's where it came from. $110,000 of that came from produce and flowers that customers harvested themselves. The rest came from admission, that's season passes and single visit tickets at $5 a head.
Of that 158.5, 44 was admission. So about half of that was season passes, and the other half were single $5 one-time visit. About 110 of that was produce and flowers. And then I took in about 4,000 in field trips and outstanding in the field and little events and stuff there.
Now the expenses. $46,500 in total costs. Two things jump out here. First, the single biggest expense is soil, amendments. Not labor, not equipment, not buildings, soil. Second, that transaction fee line, $5,000 just to process credit card payments.
So 158.5 gross. It cost us 46.5 to do it. That includes about 8,300 in salaries for my greeters, for my cashier. So that's during that 8 weeks. We have about 30 open picks. So that's salaries for those 30 picks to actually run them. And then it's 10 grand in amendments, 5 grand in transaction fees, which is so painful, and about 3,600 in insurance. That's farm and ranch, like liability stuff and whole farm revenue protection. So that's a breakdown there.
Which means the profit, the actual money left over after everything, was $112,000. $112,000 in profit for 8 weeks of selling, run by just 2 people. They left $12,000 in the business account for future expenses and split the remaining $100,000 themselves, $50,000 for each.
At the end of the season, when we're done making money, we will leave 15 to 20K in the bank and split the rest. And that's it. We're done. Walk away. It's in your pocket. Now it's your problem, right? It's out of the farm bank account. You've been paid now. See you next summer, pretty much.
What does the actual customer actually spend? Megan knows that answer.
40. Right around $40.
$40 on produce plus $5 in admission, about $45 per visit. Remember that number because it's going to matter in a minute. The engine behind all of this is something that most farms don't even offer: season passes. Last year, Megan sold about 750 season passes. Customers buy them the week before the season opens. They come whenever they want during those 8 weeks. They scan a QR code at the entrance and pick.
The season pass has definitely, it's given us this really consistent customer base that comes every week. And it's serious about making a sizable purchase every week that is there specifically to buy the food that we grow, not necessarily there for something to do with their 4 kids and they happen to buy what they picked. So that has been a really something I definitely suggest people look into because they're invested in coming back, right? They've bought a pass. They need to use it. They're invested in using it. They want to use it. So it's easy to get them back.
But here's the data behind those 750 passes that tells the real story. A third never showed up. A third came once, and the other 250 came 3 or more times. Those final 250 are the business.
Because it's much more about for the bottom line, about the tightly connected folks than the day passes who pay $5 and come once. You know what I mean? They're important too. And we gain new season passers from that pool every year. But we really have over time cultivated a really tight, I would say probably something like 250 people who are deeply supportive of us.
250 people.
My neighborhood is 10 times that size. It's just not that many.
And how does she keep those 250 people coming back? Simple. She texts them personally through a CRM that tracks every conversation.
I spend an absurd amount of money on texting, and I only text season passers. So it's a very personal communication from me directly to my most important customers. It's so expensive, but it's so effective. I cannot express enough how effective that has been just to remind them to come in.
The texts aren't sales pitches, they're crop updates.
They want to know what's in.
Yeah.
They want to know what's abundant.
She texts her customers the way you would text a friend. Bell peppers are here. Don't forget us. And that personal touch, that's not a marketing trick. It's the whole model.
Used to underestimate the importance of the personal relationship of it all, but it's incredibly important. It's what these are our most important, very important takers are looking for is a personal relationship with me and dad. So texting is you text your friends, right? So it's it takes us to that level in a way that email doesn't.
Here's where the story takes a turn that most people don't expect. Megan isn't trying to get bigger. She's not trying to add acreage. She's not hiring a team. Her plants are underproductive. She knows they could yield more. That's where her next bit of revenue lies. Not in more land, but in more output from the same land.
Yeah, I want to raise that top line. Everything else will stay the same. The more abundant the farm is on a given day, I'm going to sell more. If the same amount of people come and the farm is really abundant, I'm going to sell more that day. That's just the way that the human behavior works out there.
She took a price increase last year, the first one since they started the Pick Your Own model, about 15% across all produce.
We took a price increase last year for the first time since we started UPIC. So that was a big deal. And we didn't increase much. I think it was something like 15% across the produce board. What was $3 went to $3.50. And frankly, the market has moved so much that wasn't painful at all for people. I was not hearing comments about the cost at all. I think we just matched the market there.
No customer complaints because the value was already there. The price just caught up. Most farmers are afraid to raise prices. She waited years and still only matched the market. This isn't some get-rich-quick fantasy. It's physical work in extreme conditions, and the thing that almost made Megan walk away had nothing to do with the business.
Oh, it's the heat. It's the heat. Once it gets, and we're going back into El Nino this year, which is very sucks. I'm not looking forward to it at all. However, Dad reminded me that the last El Nino year we had was also our highest production year. That was 23. So I'm trying to keep that in mind, and maybe El Nino will bring something good with it. But the humidity will be so high. So even though the temperatures, it'll be like 88, high of 88. That's great. I could work all day in that. But the humidity's 90%. And it wears you out. I can't even describe the feeling to you, the way that it makes you feel like you're actively dying when you're in humidity like that. And that'll be 8, 9, 10 a.m., right? Then as the temps come up, the humidity burns off a little. But yeah, it's the heat.
She planted beets the day before our interview, and she was feeling it.
Yeah, man, it's a lot. I planted beets yesterday, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling that today.
Her dad's back hurts. Her body hurts differently than it did 10 years ago. She estimates about 15 years for most people doing this type of work before their body gives out.
This is going to be our ninth summer. 10 is a nice round number. But I think 15 years of market farming is about what one body should do.
So, what keeps her going?
It's the people. It's the people. We get hands-on, face-to-face contact with hundreds of people every day who are just thrilled to pieces to see you and to see your hard work and appreciate your hard work. And you get to feed them. There's nothing better than that. And they bring their kids. We're watching their kids grow up.
Someone asked Megan at a talk recently, what's next for Pure Land Farm?
I do feel, and I think Dan feels the same way, that we've won it, right? We've pieced this thing together from the start, and we have seen the potential of it early on, and we just wanted to get it all working together and play this game till we won. And I do feel like we've won it. We figured it out. Yeah, I really do. I had someone ask at a talk the other day, what's next for Pure Land? And I was like, what do you mean? We're there. We're there.
She still wants to hit that $200,000 gross goal. She thinks it's possible this year, but the model works. The life works. The business fits the person, not the other way around. She started at a farmer's market 15 years ago, switched to Pick Your Own 9 years ago, and built a community of 250 core supporters. She grossed $158,500 last year with $112,000 in profit over 8 weeks of selling with her dad off a piece of land that they don't plan to expand. No buildings, no employees, no cold storage, no delivery route, and most importantly, no year-round grind. A tent, a scale, some scissors, and a community that shows up to support her.
I know when I look back as an old lady on my life, like that will have been one of the most important things that I did with it was build that community of people and connect them with their food and connect them with the environment and all of those things in some way. To have been there as a liaison for that is so special.
Megan's book is called Pick Your Own Farming, published by Acres USA. She also has an online course with monthly live calls for people building their own Pick Your Own operations. You can find out everything at purelandorganic.com. Links in the description. Thanks for watching. I'm Diego, Diego, and until next time, be nice, be thankful, and do the work.